That was weird. Oh, all right. Well, yeah, that was weird. Sorry about that. We had a little technical difficulty, but what is up, Square Nation? Welcome back to No Counters, No Combos. This is the live Four Corners podcast that we've been recently doing with the boy Matt Manning. What is going on, homie? How are you?
I'm living a dream, my man. I'm living the dream. We are coming up with set release. The hype is building. Living the dream. How you doing out there in the Northeast?
I'm good. It's been we started school already up here, so it's been nice. Getting back into like the routine, getting back into the swing of things, especially with the kids like actually being in school full time this year with no like virtual stuff or anything like that. So that's really exciting. But aside from that, we are going to start getting back into going to locals and stuff for Dragon Ball Super. So I'm actually really excited. I'm actually going to my first local this weekend. Shout out to the Gamers Edge. I'll be back there this Saturday. Shout out to all the boys. I haven't seen them in quite some time. So I'm excited to kind of get back into the swing of things and get my cheeks clapped because I haven't played in such a long time.
Love to see it.
Yeah, so it's exciting. I mean, I've had the itch for quite some time now to get back into the game. Sometimes, and I've been talking to a lot of different people who have had the same kind of feelings or whatnot. Sometimes it's important to take your mental health into consideration, and if you feel like you're burning yourself out, it is definitely a wise idea to take a step back and just kind of reset and recharge the batteries a little bit. There's no negative, at least from me. Like, I'll never give anybody shit for wanting to take time off, because I understand it could be kind of a grind or whatnot. It could be a little bit stressful at times. Obviously, that's always going to be self-inflicted by yourself as a player, because obviously you take things that you're passionate about very seriously. But it is very important to make sure that at the end of the day you're enjoying yourself. So that's just the dad in me for tonight. But we definitely have a lot of stuff that we want to talk about tonight. Oh, yeah. And the first topic of conversation I want to talk about is diversity. We just had a couple of events that we just had where we had a top 16, and 13 out of the top 16 decks were all different like strategies and all different leaders. So I kind of wanted to start with that and get your opinion on the diversity, and is it a good thing, or is it I don't want to say it's a bad thing, but is it more of a good thing than it is a bad thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think. Oh, look at me go. So I think that the game is in a incredible place right now, because you look at how varied events are. Like, yes, you still have to prepare for the meta. The majority of a room is probably going to be, before we get the next set, yellow trunks, red UI, red GT. There are going to be the meta decks, but like the fact that you're seeing like blue-green come back into the fold a little bit, the fact that you're seeing like yellow Turles, yellow Jiren, like you're seeing these leaders that like people haven't played in so long, because yes, the format got a little bit stale. It's been a little bit of a break since we've gotten a new product, so that's been fun. But you look at how different the meta really is right now, and it's so healthy for the game. Just with so many different options. Like, you can bring a rogue deck, and if you know your matchups, you're gonna win some games.
So I I was really thinking about how I wanted to tackle this topic of conversation, and I think there's a couple of different approaches you could take. I think selfishly, as somebody whose intention has always been to see the game kind of grow and attract itself to many different players and strategies, I love it. I think it's great that there's a lot of variety. I think that it's kind of at a point where you can almost play whatever you want as long as you know what you're doing and you know what your opponent wants to do. You can kind of get away with playing quote unquote, bad decks or whatnot. So I'm glad that I'm definitely glad for that, like for sure. However, I can understand the opposite argument, and I'll elaborate. When Dragon Ball Super first develops a competitive scene, it was always kind of like a triangle format. There was always a rock paper scissors format, and it was very solved. It was very figured out, and nobody really strayed from the path. You had a couple of people that tried to be like legends and play not legends the person, like legendary, and play their own type of rogue deck, because that's the dream, right? You want to make things work that shouldn't. But for the most part, it was a rock, paper, scissors format, okay? And I think that, competitively speaking, that's okay, because when it comes down to your preparation, there's a finite strategy that you have to prepare for if you're playing a specific deck, okay? I think that the argument can be made that when a format is too wide or too varied, it can get a little overwhelming in being prepared for what it is you're going to come across against an opponent. So what do you think about that?
So I think when it comes to preparing for a wide room, I look at it a little bit differently than a lot of people, especially when it comes to the preparation itself. So I think the most important thing to do in this game at any point is you have to learn every single play, as close to every single play line as you can for your given deck. It's why I personally start testing. I mean, the second I see a deck that gets revealed that I want to play, I start testing as soon as all the cards are out, because you want to see every single play line that you have. Because if you come across, Red World Martial Arts Hercule at a regional, you're going to have no idea where they're going with that deck. Yes, they're going to play a combo-based deck, but you have no clue what they are planning. So, what are you going to do? You're going to play your strategy, and you have to be able to pivot into different play styles. If they're going to play a longer game, if they're going to play a shorter game, if they're looking to kill you in the mid-range, if they're looking to outvalue you, you need to know how you're going to handle those types of strategies more in a broad sense. So I think learning to play with those broader strokes is definitely a really, really important skill.
So yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. Like, I understand, kind of having that sense of, okay, I'm prepping for a majority of things, but there's always going to be a possibility that I might come across X, Y, and Z. But when you're playing, so my argument, or me playing devil's advocate when it comes to that, would be, wow, I just got destroyed here. When it comes to that, right, like, you're given a 50 or 60 card main board, and then you're given a 15 card side deck. There's only so much that you can prep for. So do you feel like there has to be a happy medium between diversity and kind of like a figured out format, just to make sure everything kind of... So for example, I'll give you a little bit more context. So let's say you're getting ready to go to a major event, and you understand the meta, and you've tested and you've prepared for decks A, B, and C,
Sure.
but you haven't prepared for deck G or whatever. That's your first round opponent. You get stomped because it's a rogue deck that you didn't see coming and you had no answers to in your sideboard. It kind of feels bad, right? Because you're testing all these strategies and you're doing all this, extensive research on what's good and what's not, and you get stomped by like a rogue deck that you would have never imagined, kind of even being in the room. So, do you think that there has to be more of a balance between the diversity and the figured outedness? That's not a word, but we'll just kind of use it for now.
What you mean.
Or do you think it's better for it to just be as wide open as possible?
So I think when it comes down to, especially when you're talking about like that type of example, I have a physical example of what happened to me at Otakon. I went 3-0. I started insanely hot with red UI. I was prepared for almost every meta deck. I had answers in the side for yellow, and I had answers for blue, and what to do in the red mirrors and things like that. I beat 3 pretty good players, rounds 1, 2, and 3: King Cold, Cooler, and Yellow Trunks. So I was on a pretty good streak, and then I sat down at top tables across from shout out to Franklin playing his Mass Saiyan deck, and I was like, this is a turn 3 kill deck, right? And I died with 1 energy in rest mode. It took 9 minutes. My round was literally 9 minutes. I sat down and I lost.
Okay.
And was I really frustrated more with myself? Absolutely. But he came in, he knew what he was doing, and he milled perfectly. But a deck like that is gonna do its thing. So you need to be aware that deck is always gonna be in the format. If nothing gets hit from that strategy, if Champa and Kai still exist, decks like that are going to be around. So seeing that type of thing happen, especially at a big regional, and that he topped with that deck, and that's. He was probably the only Mass Saiyan player in the room, but he knew every single one of his matchups really well. He knew what floodgates to prepare for. He knew how to stop those floodgates, and he did his thing.
Shout out to Ansh in the chat. Ansh, keeping the dream alive with Dark Broly. I know he's excited for that new Overwhelm card that we're getting in the next set.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, listen, I get it. Like, it's not a perfect system, right? Something's gonna happen to the point where you can't be prepared for everything, and I guess that's kind of the beauty of it, because it's like just like in football, any given Sunday, you could sit across somebody and they can just push your shit in, as it was a very popular term that we use in the community. But I'm all for the diversity. I don't want to make it seem like I'm complaining about 13 out of the 16 decks being different. I think that's phenomenal, because obviously there's going to be merit to playing something that you enjoy rather than something that you feel like you have to play. So by no means do I want anybody to think that I don't like the diversity. I do, but I understand, especially the more competitive players in the game. I understand where it could be a little bit difficult to be prepped for everything, especially with the limited amount of options we have in siding. So I just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were on that. So moving forward, do you think that this format that we're moving into, with the Zenkai series coming out, we haven't had a tier 0 format since probably Super Shenron, and I'm dating myself here. And Bandai has done a really good job of kind of limiting the brokenness of some of the cards that they've printed, but moving into Zenkai and this new mechanic that seems very, very powerful, and the accessibility of having cards that you can just play whenever, as long as you meet a specific requirement. Do you think that we're potentially moving into a tier 0 format with certain strategies?
No.
Okay.
I have a feeling you're referencing SS4 Gogeta.
I am a little bit.
So I want to break down, just for anyone who hasn't tested the deck. It's the deck that I'm going to play next set. As Gogeta, I'm a giant Gogeta fanboy for anyone that knows me. But the deck it almost plays the game backwards, in a really weird way. It doesn't really stick battle cards on the board. So to give you an example of a play line on, let's say, turn 2, right? So turn 2, you're going to play your Unison, which is going to free play a 1-drop. Now normally, a deck will play a cantrip and it'll stick on the board. But this deck gets value from comboing cards in rest mode. So you're going to stick the card, replace itself, and you're just going to generate this advantage where most decks in wider formats, they'll generate board advantage to get that deck game, that really strong setup to kill. This deck is going to generate a 15, 16, 17 card hand, but they're not going to be sticking battle cards until they hit a boss monster. And every single color, because black is a color, every single color has an answer for that Gogeta 8-drop. Do you have to side deck for it? Absolutely. Should you side deck for it? Absolutely. But you have ways to stop it. Every single color does. So I think when it comes to the format itself, I think the best deck in the format will be Red Sin Shenron. I think a lot of people are not looking at that because of 100,000 power and the 8-drop Gogeta being the wildest tuned boss monster ever. But that Sin Shenron deck does some wild stuff turn 3 and forward.
So, you mentioned the 8-drop Gogeta, and you say that every color has answers to it. What are those answers? Because I thought, unless I'm wrong, I thought that card was unaffected by pretty much everything.
Is. There are cards that lock players out of actions. For example, if a player is bad, a red player, if they don't swing with the Gogeta first, which I don't know why they would, King Vegeta's imposing presence, you can't give the card -5, so it can't attack. There is... blue has Dirty Burst. Blue has... and then you can side in things like Shin, Noble Supremacy, which stops from 3... So for 3 energy on your opponent's 4, they can't play... They can attack with 8 or more. Or 7 or more. I forget the exact wording. Mechikabura the Broken Seal. Gogeta 8. Gogeta GT 8.
Yeah.
And there are loads and loads of ways to do it. Or you can have 4 cards in your hand to combo out. I mean, you can activate super combo skills and then... Jesus Christ.
Woo.
Sorry, hold on.
Amber Alert. I think we lost Matt. Sounded like he had his fire alarm going off. So yes, shout out to... I see you in chat, Dylan. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the Sin archetype is probably slept on more than it should be. I'm gonna... Wow, we lost again. I'm so bad at this game. I haven't really looked into too much of the set itself outside of the superhero archetype with the Piccolos and the Gohans and stuff like that. So I can't... I'm not a good judge. Hopefully we get Matt back here so he can elaborate a little bit on Sin. But yeah, listen, I mean, there's no answers for this Gogeta direct. Like, there's no direct answers for it. You have to jump through hoops to kind of stop it, and I guess that's okay because it's not a completely uninteractable card like we've had in the past, with like Gogeta 7 and other things like that. So, I understand a lot of people's trepidation when it comes to this card. I mean, I think... I don't want to say Bandai made a mistake in printing this card because obviously nothing has happened yet with it. Like it's not officially released. We don't know how it's going to perform in actual tournament play or anything like that. But we talked about power creep last week on the podcast, and it's definitely something that lends itself more towards power creep because this is probably the strongest, most overtuned battle card that we've seen that's not a secret rare, right? So it's just going to be interesting to see how people decide to handle it moving forward. If they're going to make conscious adjustments to answer a card like that. Or if they're just going to kind of let it roll and try to, beat their opponent before they're able to get the card out, because that is also a valid possibility, right? If you're able to aggro them down quickly, even though most of the time they're going to be comboing stuff out and free playing their Saiyans to the board, it's going to be something that is going to be interesting to see how that interaction works. I think we're moving into a more mid-rangey format. I feel like the Zenkai series itself, with the emphasis on comboing and playing cards out of your Z deck, I think it just lends itself to a more mid-range format anyway. So there's not a real aggro deck, or quote-unquote real aggro deck in the format outside of maybe Mass Saiyan. So it's going to be interesting to see where that sits. And just to give everybody an update, Matt actually just messaged me. Fire alarm was going off, so I shout out to him. Or I hope everything's okay. And if he gets back, he gets back. I just hope he's able to take care of his stuff over there. Hopefully, it's nothing too serious. So with that being said, whether I could get Matt back or not will all depend on his current situation. So it might be a little shorter than normal. But, Zenkai series or Z, Dawn of the Z Battle, whatever it's called. I don't even know the name of the official set. But it's definitely going to... what's the word I'm looking for? It's definitely going to breathe a lot of fresh air into the game. The Unison Warrior block, and I've talked about this countless times, the Unison Warrior block did start feeling a little stale. And that's okay. I mean, things happen to the point where don't, and that's why, new sets are printed. So I'm glad that we're finally moving past that. I'm going to try Bugs Bunny. And I talked about it at length with him previously, that the emphasis on the comboing, which is, what separates Dragon Ball Super from a lot of the other card games that we have out, is what's refreshing. It's what's mostly refreshing to me, moving into the next set. So if you're a newer player and you feel like you want to jump in with both feet and start playing Dragon Ball Super, I think jumping into the Z series is going to be the best starting point, especially with the fact that we're getting 4 different starter decks, 1 for each color, and the starter decks themselves are pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of conversation in the community right now that the yellow starter deck is probably going to be a tier 1 deck. I haven't tested it myself just yet. I've tested against Pan, and Pan looks really good, even though it's just a slight modification on the original, what the original leader did with that alternative awakening condition. Having access to the Z deck is huge. It's just going to be interesting to see how people decide to expand on already existing or rebooted leaders. What is going on here? Okay, yeah, Bugs Bunny is weird. Okay. The Trunks deck also seems really interesting to me. I know there's a lot of people who are looking forward to that, especially because I feel like that Trunks leader from set 10 was just missing a slight, I don't want to say buff, but it was definitely missing something to kind of put it over not to put it over the top to make it a tier 1 deck, but put it over to the point where it was more successful than the showing that it had originally. So I'm glad that they decided to go ahead and reboot that leader, because I did think that archetype was pretty promising, especially with the access to those Vegetos up top, the 8 drops and the 5 drops and stuff like that. I thought those cards were really good, especially as standalone cards, but once you start rolling them into the archetype, it was also really interesting to be able to cheat those guys out with the mechanic of being able to ramp by revealing life. It was just really nice. Not being able to take crit damage was also really good. Blue has always been a defensive color, but being able to play defensively while also playing offensively, nice little combination there with those Trunks cards and those Gokus and Vegetas that allowed you to have excess energy to play stuff later on. So it's going to be really nice to have access to a good assortment of starter decks. I think the main problem with the Unison Warrior block is that we only got the 1 or 2 starter decks with the Vegex and the Frieza, and they were just supposed to support them as the sets came out. And I understand that strategy. I understand, not overprinting things because there probably wasn't such a demand for it, especially, at that time going through the pandemic. But I definitely agree with what they're doing now, just giving more accessibility to different colors. Not everybody wants to play the same color. Not everybody wants to play a black or a green deck. Not everybody wants to play a specific way according to what Bandai has printed. So having access to multiple starter decks that are pretty powerful is going to be really nice, especially for those who always are going to try to maintain their playability on a budget. So that's just really nice to see that as well. What's up, Brian? Yeah. Let's go! I actually won a game! Bugs Bunny is crazy. So yeah, again, like I said earlier, Zenkai series is looking to be a good starting point, and surprisingly enough, they're still supporting unisons and the accessibility to unisons. I don't really see a unison being printed that's ever going to really be like super overpowered, like the ones that we've gotten in the past, like Boo or this is nerfed Bugs. He was way more cracked. Well, if he was more cracked than this, I don't know, because he seems kind of broken. So that's really good there. But just to wrap that section up, anybody who's listening to me just ramble on here as I wait for my co-host to come and save me, if you haven't played the game yet, I think Zenkai series is probably going to be the way to go. The last topic of conversation for today. Let me see if I can just pull up my notes here real quick. Bear with me, chat. Oh yeah, duh, is the lack of a ban list. Last week's podcast, we ended with, the speculation that we were going to be getting a ban list, and obviously that would have been conversation fodder for this week. But, lo and behold, we actually did not get a ban list. So, no ban list is still kind of a form of a ban list, if that makes any sense. I do how should I put this? I respect Bandai for just kind of wanting to let it ride and see what happens. Especially with like the birth of a new block, the birth of a new mechanic, the birth of a new set, really. Not making too many. Yeah, Cooler Champa. That's what's gonna happen. Cooler Champa is just, I mean, we've talked about it before on how strong that interaction is. So the fact that they decided to again not do anything about it is pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, listen, they're coming out with new cards. They want to push the new product. I get it. It's kind of like a catch-22 for me. Like, I respect them for, wanting to like let it ride and just kind of see how it goes. Obviously, they're in a pretty safe spot too, because there's still another set that's gonna come out before the nationals or whatnot. So obviously, if there's a huge issue with the meta at that point, they can always just adjust the ban list then before Nats, which is probably what is going to happen, especially, moving into this new series now. If there's going to be stuff and interactions that are just broken, they're obviously going to have to adjust it before their national championship, right? It just makes sense. So I guess they're just kind of letting it, sit and see how we, the player base, abuse it. But are there things that should have got hit? Sure. There's definitely cards that should have got touched. Champa being one of them. Cooler probably. I'll get into a little bit more with Cooler in a minute here. It's not so much that Cooler is overpowered. It's just it's limited. I'll elaborate on that in a second. But I watched Joey's video about the Bardock's crew archetype that he made today, and he was talking about like the extra card basically that is their Champa. So he hit the nail right on the head with the point that he made. When you start printing in archetype, specific cards that are similar to cards that already exist, that are a lot more splashable and a lot more diverse, or flexible is probably the word I should use, there's no point of playing those new cards. So like the perfect example is like Champa with any archetype specific card that gives you double strike, right? There's no point in playing those archetype specific cards, especially if they're extra cards that limit who you give the double strike to. Perfect. Another example too is like Fruit of the Tree of Might, right? Like back when we got Green Turles, right? Fruit of the Tree of Might gave Turles only double strike, right? It was a card that was searchable, and it was a card that you can accrue value as the game went on because it was part of the archetype, but it wasn't one of those things where it was like, okay, well, if I play this card, I'm good, because you could just play a Champa, and Champa could give the double strike to anybody. And if you were playing your Cosmic Rogue and giving your other Turles Crusher Cores the 10k boost, you could now give them a Champa and make them swing for lethal, as opposed to just kind of making your plays readable, or telegraphed is probably a better way of saying it, with the fruit. So that's kind of why cards like Champa and Hidden Power E Supreme Kai shouldn't exist, just because of the versatility that they have and the widespread effect that they have on cards in the meta. It's not so much that the card itself is broken or just should not exist, but if you're going to go ahead and continue to print cards that literally do the same thing but lock you into a specific leader or a specific archetype or a specific trait, then there's just no point of printing those types of cards. Dylan, real quick here, he doesn't think Cooler will get hit anytime soon because of the Xeno Goku promo. So that's a good segue into what I wanted to talk about. I don't think Swift Retaliation Cooler deserves to get banned because it's too strong. I don't think at all. I think that there should probably... I think there's an argument that can be made that more counters need to be available in the game. But if you look at the game as a whole, obviously, now they just revealed this Xeno Goku counter for the Supreme Kai of Time deck. And then you have your Golden Ape and your Cooler, right? So those are your three counters in the game right now. So essentially, what my point is, the point that I'm trying to make is, I don't think Cooler needs to get banned because it's too strong. I just think that it needs to get banned because there's not enough availability for cards in different colors to Cooler's ability. So there's no counters for red, probably. I really don't think so. There's no counters for green outside of a secret rare, and it's limited because it's only on a battle card swing. So it's one of those things where if you're not going to do it for everybody, then you probably shouldn't do it. And I don't mean that in a way where it's going to reduce a color's identity. I don't want to get heat for that, because that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when it comes to blanket mechanics, like a counter, or even a counter attack, right? Every color has a counter attack. Every color has a counter play. Every color should have a counter that's easier for them to play than like 5 energy or like having a secret rare or one of. So I think that's kind of where my thought process is when it comes to Cooler. I don't think it needs to get banned because it's too overpowered. I just think it needs to get banned because there's not a lot of accessibility for other colors having similar effects. So it's kind of like a quality of life improvement as opposed to just an overall, meta call or like future proofing. And Swift Retaliation Cooler came out a long time ago. Bandai has had plenty of opportunities to print counters in other colors, and they've very rarely picked and chosen what counters get printed and what doesn't. So, wow, I had 2 knockouts. Let's go. Wonder Woman's kind of good. Brian, what do you think about Wonder Woman? What's the consensus on Wonder Woman there? I think she's pretty good. So yeah, I mean, listen, it's all subjective, right? It's all like meta based and player based, and obviously people are going to want cards banned that they have issues with, But I think for the overall health of the game, I think Cooler is a good card. I mean, it costs 3 energy, which is not super expensive, but also not super cheap. It's not like Bad Ring Laser, where it was just a 1 energy and discard a card. So, it's kind of like an unnecessary evil, so to speak. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about Cooler, chat. I know everybody has their own Cooler story, but I think it's fine. I mean, yellow is definitely a very strong color. and it's going to get even stronger as the game, continues to print strong yellow archetypes, like looking at Bardoc's crew, moving into Zenkai. But there's a lot of strong yellow cards. I mean, Power of a Super Saiyan has been limited. Cold Bloodlust has been limited, even though that's leader locked or trait locked to Frieza Army, or Frieza Clan. I think it's Frieza Army. It has been limited. Battering Laser has been banned. What's another yellow one of? The only thing about the ban list would be an errata to U7 Goku Lead Awaken. I mean, I haven't played against U7 Goku enough to think anything of it. I mean, I understand that it's a really strong strategy. I mean, but it is what it is, right? Like, you can't make everybody happy, which, I mean, obviously that's what we all want, right? We all want peace, happiness, and like rainbows and unicorns and cotton candy and all this great stuff, right? But you can't make everybody happy, because the things that you do for one person to make them happy could completely piss off somebody else. So I think you kind of have to take the good with the bad, and you have to make mistakes in order to correct them, right? So maybe Bandai's mistake, and I'm just talking hypotheticals now, maybe Bandai's mistake going into the Z series was actually not banning anything. Maybe that's a mistake. But there's only one way for them to learn from that mistake, and we're going to find out in the next couple of months, right? So that's pretty much it. I mean, I hope Matt is okay. I'm going to message him now and see if he's all right. He did say his fire alarm was going off. So I hope... he just texted me at... let's see. Fire alarm's going off. Gonna be well. Sorry, bro. Gonna be another few minutes. I mean, it's fine. It doesn't bother. I just hope that he's okay. I hope it's nothing too serious. Outside of having him elaborate on what we've already spoken about, I don't really have much more to say in regards to what we've talked about. Let me just look at Dylan's comment here real quick. Where's my chat? It's not even a nerf. All the other leads with alternative awakenings go down to 6 life. So, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be like I don't want to say boogeyman. I feel like that's so played out, right? Like, it's not the boogeyman. There's always going to be something, right? There's always going to be something that makes us unhappy, or, something that we feel is too broken. I mean, but you have to remember, we've come from like Super Shenron days. We've come from Mecha Apes. We've come from a lot more, broken interactions that took a while for them to be answered or resolved. So I really do think that we're in a pretty good spot right now. I don't think anything is overly toxic or overly broken or anything like that. I don't think there's any mechanics in the game right now that we can't handle, without a little creativity. So, like I mentioned last week, there's a lot of older cards, especially, that could potentially start seeing more play just because of how Z series is focusing on the emphasis in combo. Like I talked about Jocko. I talked about Group Leader Pilaf. Like, you got to remember, Group Leader Ooh, that was lag. Ooh, lag. Group Leader Pilaf is a counter to Z battle cards. I mean, even though they are Z battle cards, they are still treated as battle cards while they're in the battle area. And there's a lot of other cards in other colors that I'm going to look into and present them to you guys in probably like a Tech Talk video or something like that. But, definitely don't overlook anything right now. Like, just if you have bulk from older sets, just like kind of go through it, look through it, see if there's anything that's really cool in there that might benefit from combo interactions. Anything like that could be comboed with from the drop area. That's going to be huge because you're recycling cards that have already been used, and then you're applying them to your Z energy. Especially if you can recycle cards that have already been used as Z energy moving forward to kind of just loop. I don't loop your card, your Z cards out of your Z deck. Oh my god, I've said Z so many times. But outside from that, I think the only real issue I have with moving into this next block is the lack of, I shouldn't say the lack of, but the sheer lacklusterness, if that's a word, of black. Like, I'm not too happy with the shroom and salsa stuff. Like, I don't think that's the wave at all. What, this lag? Did you see that? I just lagged into a KO. That's insane. Unless that's just me being terrible at this game. Yeah, I don't think black... I think black got like the shitty end of the stick this go around. I know it's been pretty powerful for quite some time, you know, dating all the way back to set 10 with Vegex, and, you know, and obviously Xeno Gogeta being very strong and having a good representation, and just some of their battle cards being slightly overtuned. I get it. But that just means that it's going to be broken again in the next two sets. Oh, Matt just commented, sorry squad, I'll be back soon. Fire alarm is off in our apartment complex. Matt, if you're watching, don't worry about it, dude. Like, it's just take care of what you got to take care of. You know, we can always recap next week. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I mean, just to wrap things up, let me just select my character here. Just to wrap things up, a couple of highlights. If you're a new player, if you haven't started playing the game yet and are wondering if you should, I think this is definitely the way to do it. I mean, you might come across got the cat out, and we will definitely recap Square. Now, listen, man, you don't have to apologize. I'm glad you were able to get your cat out. I'm glad you guys were able to get to safety, so don't even worry about it. You know, we'll talk more about stuff next week. It's not even that big of a deal. For newer players who haven't started playing the game yet or are just kind of dabbling here and there, I think now is the time to kind of commit and see where you're at. There's definitely going to be some things that you might come across that might not be the best, but that's all part of any card game that's this many sets in, right? So if you're going to take the leap, take it now. Get your hands on some of the starter decks. They're pretty powerful in my opinion. And then, you know, just kind of like develop an identity for what you want to play. I think a lot of my biggest issue, which is why I probably burn myself out so much, is I like to try and play different decks every week, or I like to try and play different strategies all the time, just to kind of keep things fresh. And I think for a long time that worked, but I don't think it works for me anymore. I think I really have to kind of start narrowing down what it is that I enjoy the most, and just kind of stick to that. You know, deck building, a new deck every week is kind of tough, especially with the way my schedule is and the way my life is, you know, my responsibilities outside of, you know, no counters, no combos. But, you know, if you're in that same boat where you feel like, you know, you want to just try different things, by all means. I think that you don't know what you want unless you try other things. So if you're like a red player and you want to try blue, or you're a blue player and want to try green, you know, try it out. But definitely don't break the bank doing so. And utilize online resources. You know, whether it's Untap, even though it's not the greatest place to play, utilize it. It's free. You have access to every single card in the game on Untap without spending any money. And you have all these online resources like DBS Deck Planet, which is a great place to build decks virtually. And also, you know, it's kind of a blessing in disguise if you really think about it. It might not be everybody's favorite way of playing, but, you know, because of the pandemic, we've actually had to rely a lot on webcam and Discord and all these other alternative ways of playing. So, speaking of Discord, you can check out the links in our description box down below. You'll be able to join our Discord there if you're looking for any webcam games or just, you know, places to chat and get your ideas down. Feel free to join. We also have a Facebook group for all you new players who haven't really dove in just yet. You know, I try to post everything there as often as I can. But for the most part, I mean, Dragon Ball Super is an enjoyable game in my opinion. The mechanics are really good. The IP is strong. And I think we're moving into a very nice new mechanic that's going to breathe some much needed life into the game. So with that being said, we're going to get on out of here. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and please hit that notification bell so you guys can stay up to date with everything No Counters, No Combos. We really do appreciate the support. We'll see you guys next week. Be there or be squared.